This is Raceway Ministries Today. Thanks for joining us for Raceway Ministries Today. In just a moment, we'll be sharing with you the latest in what's going on in the world of Christian ministry and outreach through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. I'd like to welcome you to today's edition of Raceway Ministries Today. Raceway Ministries Today is our podcast platform for the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, and we are super excited to be out there at the nation's raceways, both the large speedways and the short tracks, drag strips, karting venues. We're out there doing ministry, sharing the Lord Jesus at racing venues all over the country, and we're excited to do that. We're very thankful for it. And if any of you who are listening today would like to find out more about who we are and what we do, you can go to our website, racewayministries.org, or you can go to our Facebook page. We have a couple of Facebook pages. One of them is National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. The other one is Raceway Ministries at the Short Tracks. And then you can always go to our YouTube channel where we have all of our previously recorded podcast interviews and a couple of other things there. And we'd love to have you jump in and be a part of the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. If you'd like to support our ministry, there is a contribution button on one of the pages on our website. And if you want to contribute and support that, of course, would be welcomed. But today we are very, very excited to have on the podcast a gentleman by the name of Jeff Sheffield. Jeff is a very fascinating guy. I've been out there doing Raceway Ministries for several years. He moved to North Carolina last year, and he immediately, when he got there, began to seek opportunities to keep on serving as a chaplain in motorsports, which is what he has done on several different occasions in several different places. And he ended up serving in that role as chaplain at the Southern National Motorsports Park there in North Carolina. In fact, he jumped right into the role of chaplain almost as soon as he moved into town by going out there and serving during their fall Thanksgiving Classic. Now, Jeff is not a stranger to Raceway Ministries work at all. He's been around it for several years. He's been to several different venues sharing the Lord Jesus. Those include Gresham Motorsports Park, Lanier Speedway over there in Georgia, and then Houston Motorsports Park down here in Texas. And so, Jeff, I would like to welcome you to this afternoon's Raceway Ministries Today podcast.
I'm excited to be here, Roger.
Well, it's so good to have you, and I've got to tell you, I really appreciate the longevity that you have in doing Raceway Ministries work. You've been at it for a while, and I really appreciate the passion that you have for the sport. I know that you're, involved in many, many other things in your life. You've had a professional career going on. You've got other things going on. You're very involved with your local church and so forth. But I want to tell you personally, thank you so much for being so involved in doing Raceway Ministries work. Now, for starters, I think it'd be helpful to kind of put it into perspective by having you tell us a little bit about your background as a follower of Christ. Now, I don't think I've ever heard your story of how and when your walk with Jesus began, but maybe you can kind of give us some insight in that. So if you don't mind, share a word about your testimony.
That's kind of an interesting story. I might be considered a late bloomer in some ways. My wife, here in about 2 weeks, we will going into our 43rd year.
Wow, well, congratulations on that.
Well, thank you. She was more the spiritual one. I was not, when we got married, I was not actively attending church. She changed that up. But as I've grown older and I've looked back at my history, I can see where I think God was kind of, remember the old pinball machines where they had the little bumpers that you would hit?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Ball?
Yeah.
I believe that God was doing that to me, but He let me experience the world. In doing so, racing ministry is interesting because you may come up on a situation, there's some fellows working on a car, and they'll be inventing new words. Let's put it that way.
Yes, I got you.
They're very plain spoken, we can say that. So nothing really shocks me. We got very involved with church. We go to a Methodist church, and I would tell people that I am a professional Methodist. I can set tables and chairs up faster than they can drop the checkered flag,
Yeah,
So, just trained in what, if somebody doesn't show up, you're out there, being an usher, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
In 2006, my life got turned upside down. I had a surgery that went bad. The surgeon told my wife that if I made it through the surgery they were fixing to do, I was on the table for 8.5 hours. It was from a simple gallbladder surgery that went bad.
My goodness.
And so I came out of that with a very different perspective on things. And in the Methodist Church, they have what are referred to as lay speakers. And I became a certified lay speaker. So I began speaking at churches, but too often I see with churches that we want people to come to see us. I wanted to go see people.
Okay.
And I was very interested in auto racing, and I would see somebody that would do the invocation at a racetrack, and I was like, well, that's kind of interesting. I started looking into the racing ministry and ended up at Gresham Motorsports Park.
Okay.
It was cold, and I really wasn't feeling that great. I was still feeling some of the results of that surgery a couple of years afterwards. It took me a while to recover from. So I was there, and it came time to do the invocation, and it was cold. And I looked across, and here comes this fella, and he's taking off his coat. And I said, what in the world is he doing? It's cold out here. And the fella's name is Phil Martin. He became my rabbi, to put things in perspective. And a fellow walked up to me out of the blue and said, if you want to learn about racing ministry, talk to that fellow coming up to the microphone. He can help you. And I was kind of blown away. I didn't know who the guy was.
Mm-hmm.
He was on his way. And I called Phil the next day. And Phil said, well, Jeff, I'll give you a try. And we talked for, 2 hours. And Phil told me point blank, he said, Jeff, I have a lot of people that want to do racing ministry, and they come for a couple of races, and then I never see them again.
Yeah.
And so this was, oh my goodness, this was before 2010.
Mm-hmm.
So Phil, that was at Gresham Motorsports Park. Phil told me, he said, come on, and let's go to Lanier. So I went to Lanier, and he said, I'm going to work with you, but I want you to be at Lanier. And the worldly side of me wanted to be at Gresham. That was the bigger, faster track.
Yep, right.
Lanier was the smaller track. But I said, okay, if that's where I need to be, then that's where I'll be. So Phil would show me the ropes, and I started doing the invocation and started doing a little 5 minutes with the drivers and doing a prayer with them. And then Phil showed me that at Lanier and at Gresham, the cars were staged, and we started going around and doing a prayer with each of the drivers.
Right.
When they were staged and ready to go out. And you started to get a one-on-one with the drivers, and they would come up to you, their families would come up to you. We had a lot of young kids that were racing. Some of them are in NASCAR now.
Yeah, right.
And
sure.
The mothers and fathers, we would have special prayers, sometimes with groups of them, sometimes it was one-on-one. You started getting this one-on-one relationship with them, and to this day I have still maintain that. They come to me and ask for prayers and on Facebook, and a couple of times I've talked to them on the phone. But in the back of my mind, it was like, are we doing what we need to do? One night at Lanier, I was doing the invocation, and I opened my eyes while I was looking down at my feet, and there in the track was an old rugged cross, and my feet were on both sides of it.
Like a crack in the asphalt or the concrete?
It was a crack in the asphalt, and it formed a perfect old rugged cross.
Okay.
And it took my breath away. And I paused, and the owner of the track was a fellow by the name of Donnie Clack, and Donnie bumped me. And I finished it, and then afterwards I showed Donnie, I said, look what's in your track. And he was like, oh my goodness, Jeff. He said, if I'd have seen that doing an invocation, he said, I might have ended up on my knees. To me, I took it as an indication. And what was interesting about it is it was on the finish side of the start-finish line. And the thought came to me is the cross on the finish side of your start-finish line in your life.
Sure.
And that was just a very, very powerful moment. I shared that with people, and people would come out and look at that spot in the track. And so that's kind of how I ended up in the racing ministry, and Phil and I worked both Lanier Speedway and Gresham Motorsports Park.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then in 2013, my company closed the office where I was at in Georgia, and I moved to Houston, Texas, and I had kind of a couple of years there that I wasn't doing anything with racing. And then Houston Motorsports Park reopened their round track, and I contacted them and ended up out there doing the chaplain duties. And all I've ever told the promoter, owner of the track, whatever it was, you just let me sign in, and it doesn't cost you anything except to let me through the doors. And if I do something wrong, let me know. If I do something right, let me know. I'll be happy to do the invocation. If you have somebody come in that you want to do the invocation, that's great. That's fine with me. I'm not here for me. I'm here for the fans. I'm here for the race car drivers, their teams, their families, and I'm here for the track.
Yeah.
And we just had a great relationship with that. Once again, I get to meet all these folks, and then we start comparing notes, and they know the same people in Georgia that I know.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Racing is a big family.
Yes, it is.
Amazing how people know one another in completely different parts of the country that you'd never have.
It really is amazing.
And it's exciting, because of that. And then Houston Motorsports Park, they had some promoter issues or whatever, and it kind of went dark for a little while. Well, I discovered 2 dirt tracks, and I'd always been a hard surface, asphalt, concrete spectator.
Yeah.
So I went and bought a ticket to a place called Battleground Speedway, which was over on the east side of Houston, and went in there as a spectator in the pits and walked up and was wearing my Raceway Ministries shirt.
Okay.
And a hat, and I walked up and started introducing myself, and the promoter, owner of the track, said, that's fine with me if you want to do that. And so I got introduced to the dirt track world. And, I think it's in Hebrews, it says to be bold in your faith, and that's basically what I was doing. And again, I meeting all these folks and praying with folks, and sometimes as a chaplain we end up being peacekeepers. And I was telling the story where there were some drivers, and we were getting ready to have a good old Southern throwdown, and they were all trying to grab one another, and I just started praying right in the middle of them and calmed the situation. And one of the drivers said, "Why'd you do that?" I said, "I didn't want to see blood spilled." And we all kind of laughed about it. And, you know, the tempers run hot.
Oh, yeah.
Racetrack. People get excited, and, you know, so, and then a bunch of the drivers said, "Well, we're also racing at 105 Speedway on Friday nights." And I'm like, okay. Well, where I lived at in Houston, I was about halfway between Battleground Speedway and 105 Speedway, which was on the north side of Houston. It was in the next county up. And so I started going there, and here again, they, you know, would ask me to do the invocation, and
sure,
got to meet the announcers, and a couple of times various things happened, and I would have an opportunity to witness. But the driving force behind all of it was, we're taking Jesus, we're taking the church outside of the walls.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's a broken world out there, and there are a lot of people that just need to talk to someone.
Well, yeah, you're so right, Jeff. You know, and just thinking back on kind of how you've rehearsed your story. You know, first of all, backing up, you out there in the world, you know, God was preparing you then. You know, I know in my own life, some of the things I've done in my life, I've wondered at some points in time, how does that fit in with what God's called me to do? Because I've always been mechanically oriented, and I've always loved cars, and I've always loved loud music, and I've done machine shop work, and I've done tons of stuff, you know, before I was called to pastor churches. And then when Raceway Ministries came along, all of a sudden my heart began to really beat hard because of my experience out there in the world with mechanic work and music and racing. I always loved racing. Fast cars and loud guitars were things that I always loved. And so when God opened up that opportunity, my heart began to beat that way. And when I got in the middle of it, I discovered that God was not going to waste my experience. And so he put me in situations where I could share the love of Jesus with people in a context that I could identify with. You know, it sounds to me like God has done that very thing in your life. And the intriguing thing is, when he got you hooked up with Philip Martin, I can't think of a better person for you to connect with. Philip, wow. I mean, this guy, what an effective chaplain Philip has been. What a fantastic guy that knows racing and loves racing, and yet loves to minister in the name of Jesus, too. And God put you two guys together. I can't think of anybody better to walk you through some initial steps. And then God broadened your experience from asphalt to dirt, and I can see God preparing you all along the way. And you're exactly right. God puts us in places where we can take the gospel outside the walls of the church. Because out there at the Raceway, you know it and I know it, it's filled out there in the pits, and it's filled in the grandstands with broken, hurting people that don't know what to do with their pain and don't know what to do with their hardships that they face in life. And to have a light go out there in that darkness, I sense that God calls and equips some of us to go out there and be that light in those unique places. So I've got a lot of appreciation for what you've shared with us about your story. It all adds up. All makes sense to me. You know, I had no idea you had all that experience before Southern National Motorsports Park. And yet, you know, God was preparing you all along the way in some big ways.
He was. When I knew I was going to be leaving Houston, I reached out to Michael Diaz, who owns Southern National Motorsports Park, and I asked him, and he said, "Do you have a chaplain?" He said, "No, I don't." And I said, "Would you be interested in a chaplain?" He said, "Yes, you have any experience?" And I named off the tracks and the number of years, because, you know, that was 2 tracks in Georgia and 3 tracks in Texas, and now I'm in North Carolina. That makes 6.
Right.
And Michael said, "Well, when you get moved over, contact me." And I came over in September of last year. I got my feet on the ground, and I said, "When can we talk?" And he said, "Well, we're going to be having the Thanksgiving Classic. I'll leave your name at the gate. Come on, and we'll figure it out."
Wow.
I had never done a 3-day event before.
Yeah.
So it was very enlightening.
Well, tell us, how did that weekend unfold? I mean, here you are, brand new to the track. You know, you kind of cold turkey contact the owner and say, hey, I'm available. He says, yeah, come on. So you suddenly jump into a 3-day weekend without really having any time to survey the situation, evaluate, you know, what you're going to do. How did the weekend unfold? What kind of activities did you end up in, and how did things go?
I have found that if you just kind of ease along and introduce yourself to folks and tell them who you are and what you are, one of the lines that I think we walk as a chaplain is people are out there for competition. They're out there to race.
Right.
Other people are out there to be the audience, to be the spectators. And if they want church, they're going to go to church on Sunday in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So, you know, we don't want to be a burden to people or, you know, get in their way. So I would just ease around and talk to people. And I still had some racer prayers that I had been carrying around with me, and I started handing those out to drivers.
I think you indicated to me one time on email a graphic of what you have. It's a sticker that they could put on their dashboard, or
it's a sticker that some of them will put it on one of the bars for the roll cage. Some will put it on the dashboard. I've even had a couple of drivers that put them back on like the left quarter panel, so the guy that's fixing to put him in the wall will see that and maybe think twice about it. So, you know, the drivers you go there. And then as I got to talking to people, here again, the racing family, you know, enters into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, Jeff, you were at so-and-so. Did you know this person?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I did know him very well. And who's the tech guy down there? Oh, yes, I know him.
Yeah, there you go.
And then all of a sudden, the family of racing opened the door.
Yes.
And then, you know, because that race was Thanksgiving, NASCAR was already over and done. There were some drivers that showed up out of the NASCAR ranks to run some of the races in the off season. And they were people I had known from Gresham and Lanier.
Okay.
So it's like old home week, so to speak.
Wow.
So God works all things out for good.
He does.
We proved that, you know, over and over and over again.
Oh, yeah.
It's just very exciting. I always say expect the unexpected.
Oh, yeah.
When you're least expecting God to do something, boom, there it is. It happens, and you step back from it and go, I never saw that coming, but thank God, let's grab it and go. And then one of the other practices that I have at the track, like these were big races for these different classes of cars, I would go around, and because we'd already had a drivers meeting, and we always say a prayer for the drivers, but I will go around and touch the spoiler or touch the back end of the car and just say a quick prayer that the car protects the driver. Because in a situation where a car gets out of control, a car gets hit or whatever, that driver is now, he's just weight in the seat, and the momentum of that car is going to carry it around to do whatever's going to happen.
Right.
And at that moment, that car is what's going to protect him. So I would say a prayer to bless the car and bless the hands that have worked on that car, the welders that have welded that tubular steel together. And in a lot of cases, when I'm doing that, there's somebody's mother or grandmother or their wife or whatever, and they walk up and say, what are you doing touching the race car? Now I have the opportunity to talk with them, and then it's like, well, hold on a minute. And they're going and gathering people around and say, would you have a prayer with us?
Yeah, there you go.
So it's kind of a, I don't know what the right word is, let's say nonchalant way of opening that door for prayer and then doing what we do as chaplain.
Well, I think that's totally valid. Why not ask God to bless and minister to the ones that have put that car together? And certainly pray for that vehicle to hold together in case an accident happens. I mean, I think that's valid. But then if you add to that the opportunity to build relationships and get the people connected with that car to have prayer with you, that's just, man, that's like icing on the cake in terms of opportunity. So, man, what a great idea.
Here again, that's because Phil and I would do the prayer with the drivers. And I would always lay hands on the car. And I would, a lot of times the drivers, they'll reach out, they have different handshakes. But I'd reach up with my other hand and put it on the car and say a quick prayer. So it's just another way to do it. And so many times we've seen horrendous accidents.
Yes.
And you see that window net come down. You see that driver emerge.
Yeah.
And people go, how did that happen? You've got to look at who his co-pilot is, all the hands that prepared that car.
Well, now, let's talk about ministry ideas and approaches. And I want to look at it this way. We've already mentioned several things that I think are so key. I love what you've been talking about in terms of building relationships. You built relationships at those other speedways before you got to Southern National. You built relationships in the beginning there at Lanier and there at Gresham. Then you go to Texas and you begin to build relationships there. In the process of building those relationships with those people, all of a sudden it's connect the dots time. Oh, I know so-and-so from back over there. Did you know so-and-so back at another racetrack and so forth? I think what we need to understand is if we will take the time to build relationships with people, God has been working as the engineer in the background all along to create new opportunities. So lo and behold, you go to Southern National and all the dots begin to be connected again. One of the reasons I think that you've had so much opportunity is, one, you've made yourself available. The other thing you've done is you've taken the time to build relationships. A third thing that I would suggest is you've been laid back in your approach. Kind of slowly, casually moving into the pit area, not running there like a gangbuster, beating people over the head with the Bible and so forth, but just taking the time to, in sort of a casual way, build relationships with these people. Like you said, they're not there for church, they're there to race. And they're there to, get all the racing they can get in on a Saturday night and then drink all the beer they can drink afterwards. And the last thing on their mind is church. So, you come in there and you're all of a sudden a friendly, warm body that shows concern and compassion, and they begin to pick up on it, and God begins to work. I see all those dynamics in what you have explained. But if there was somebody that came to you and said, look, out of all these years of experience that you have, and out of all these places where God has taken you to do Raceway ministry work, can you tell me 2 or 3 bits of advice or counsel that can help me get started and be effective in being a chaplain at a short track? What 2 or 3 things would you tell them, Jeff?
One of the first things I would say is be humble. If a NASCAR driver's there, you're not out there to rub shoulders with the NASCAR driver.
Yeah, sure.
You're out there as a servant. That's one of the biggest opportunities that I've seen, is to be a servant. Back during the Classic at Southern National, I saw this lady, and she was trying to move 4 tires from the tire impound location to their pit location.
Okay.
And she was trying to push them a little bit. It looked to me like she was trying to herd cats. So I went over and said, do you need some help? And she said, well, who are you? And I introduced myself, and she said, oh my goodness, God is looking out for me. Yes, I'm trying to get these tires to so-and-so down there. So she's rolling 2 tires and I'm rolling 2 tires, and we get them down there. And then I get to meet everyone, on the team. And they're all thanking me because they all had their little duties that they were doing.
Right.
So I go out there as an extra set of hands. Many times that I'm just always looking for an opportunity to help, because you don't know what kind of door that may open.
Oh, yeah.
There's a Southern gospel song that was written by 3 ladies called Beloved. They were from up in North Georgia, and the song is called Sometimes, and it says sometimes you got to wash somebody's feet, and sometimes you got to look for a need. And
Absolutely.
that song has touched my heart, so I see the opportunity. And if we have a moment, I would tell you a funny story at Lanier one night, and this is a great example of this. I'm down in the pits, and there was a team that had come from up in, I believe they were from Tennessee or Kentucky, and it was a fella and his best friend. There was just the two of them,
Okay.
and they had a late model car. And they got out there and they got into a fender bender. Well, the fella comes flying in, and I ran over to the pit because I knew it was going to happen. He only had a certain amount of time to make the repairs. So the window net comes down. One glove goes one way, one glove goes another way. The helmet comes off. It goes the Hans device. And they're out there working on the car. And I'm standing there helping them get the hood off, and I'm collecting the pins. Well, I've already gone and put his helmet and his gloves and his Hans device on top of the car.
Okay.
So I help them get everything done, and I've collected the tools so they don't leave something on the engine or whatever. And I look out of the corner of my eye, and I see the driver. Now it dawns on me. Where did I put the helmet? Where did I put the gloves?
Yeah.
Where did I put the Hans device? And there they are. And he's like, he did kind of like a double take.
Yeah.
And so he gets back in the car. He goes out, and he had a decent finish, as I recall. And I was down in the pits afterwards, and he said, I remember seeing you. Are you an angel? I said, no, I'm just a chaplain.
Yeah.
I said, but I saw you needed help, and that's what I'm out here for.
Yeah.
I'm out here to be a servant. And he told me, he said that just, and I'm not telling these stories to bring light on myself, but this is the kind of thing that we do. When you're the chaplain there may be a church group there. I love to find out there's a church group there, because if I can get a hold of that pastor, now I'm going to get him in a side headlock, and I'm going to take him down front, stick the microphone in his hand, and say, here, you do the invocation. They listen to me every week.
Yeah.
And, there's a great opportunity in that. Another night at Lanier, we actually had 5 chaplains, besides myself, show up for the race.
My goodness.
And I found something for every one of them to do. It's not about me. So if you go out there with a servant's heart, and you go out there humble, it's going to open doors.
It certainly will. Yeah, no doubt about it. So, your point is well taken. I mean, Jeff, you hit the nail on the head. Be humble, be a servant, be available, be a helper, be a blessing and not a burden. You got to get out there and do that. So, beyond being humble and being a servant, anything else that you would advise?
Just, when you see an opportunity for prayer, do it. Just meet the folks where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try and steer them in a certain direction, one way or the other. I have always found that when you do an invocation, that can sometimes open doors with the way you do the invocation. And before you go out there, pray. I have prayer walk tracks, and I had people here again, well, what are you doing walking around the track? Well, I'm doing a prayer walk just to pray over the track, that we'll have safe racing, that we'll have great competition, and everybody will have a lot of fun.
Yeah,
and
there you go.
Just be available.
Sure.
Every track has a ebb and flow with the way it functions.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And the only way that you can get to know that is be available and take the time to be there. I mean, you can't just show up at invocation time, do your thing, and then walk through the pits quickly and then go home.
No.
You got to be out there and get to know those people. But when you get to know that ebb and flow, you get to understand how to interface with the activity and with the people there. And once you get to know them and their style and who they are and how they operate, God begins to open up those opportunities for sure.
To me, it is one of the most rewarding ministries.
Now, for all of our listeners, I just want to remind everybody that we are visiting with Jeff Sheffield in Raceway Ministries today. Jeff is currently chaplain at Southern National Motorsports Park there in North Carolina and has lots of experience at Gresham and Lanier over in Georgia, several different tracks down in southern part of Texas, and now there in North Carolina. And Jeff has been sharing with us a lot of great ins and outs, principles, methods, approaches, all kinds of information about how to do effective ministry at a short track. And so, Jeff, I want to say thank you so much for taking your time to visit with us today. You've shared lots of information with us, and if anybody wanted to follow up and visit with you more about any of the aspects of your approach to ministry or what you do there at Southern National, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can find me on Facebook through the Raceway Ministries pages.
Okay. All right.
And a lot of time making comments or saying something when we have a need out there, and just encourage.
Well, you're a frequent visitor to our Raceway Ministries at the Short Tracks Facebook page. So if anybody wanted to connect with you, they can certainly find the name Jeff Sheffield in a lot of our comments. And on the Raceway Ministries at the Short Tracks page, what we try to do is feature a different speedway and Chaplain at least every other day on the Facebook page. And certainly Jeff pops up there from time to time. Now, Jeff, before we go, any other thoughts that you might like to share? Any other tidbits of information about your work as a chaplain that you might want to share?
Humor.
Okay.
Humor is one of the best ways to break down walls.
Yeah. Well, Raceway Ministries, if you want to boil it down to the bare bones, so to speak, it's all about creating opportunities to be able to share the love of God in Christ with people who are in need. And if it's humor, or if it's a prayer opportunity, or if it's crisis, whatever the case may be, when the opportunity presents itself, God has opened up for you a window of time to be able to step into a person's life and share His love and to share the grace of God. And that's what it's all about. So I love your creative way of looking for opportunities to share God's message with people out there at the racetrack. Absolutely awesome. We're going to have to wrap up our time. We've been cruising along here for quite a while, and I could talk with you all day, Jeff, and listen to your stories, but we're going to have to cut it short here this afternoon. Maybe we can get back on the horn at another time later in the race season and find out how things have unfolded for you there at Southern National Motorsports Park. Well, folks, we've been visiting with Jeff Sheffield today, chaplain at Southern National Motorsports Park there in North Carolina. And so if you would like to find out more about Jeff and what he has going on in terms of Raceway Ministries work, contact him. Facebook page is simply Jeff Sheffield, and he pops up a lot on our Raceway Ministries at the Short Tracks Facebook page, as well as our National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries Facebook page. So jump in there and grab Jeff and ask him some questions or find out from him what you might need to know. But meanwhile, I want to thank all of our listeners for joining us for this edition of Raceway Ministries Today. This is our podcast platform for the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. And of course, you can get in touch with us by jumping on our website, racewayministries.org. You can go to our Facebook page, National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, or the Raceway Ministries at the Short Tracks Facebook page, or you can go to our YouTube channel and pick up some of the other podcasts that we do from time to time, plus all the ones that we've recorded from last year. So with all that in mind, I want to say thanks to our listeners. Special thanks to Jeff Sheffield. And as we all move along through the race course of life, obviously lots of twists and turns and lots of obstacles along the way. But God's put us in the race if we've placed our faith and trust in the Lord Jesus Christ. And God promises that He'll never leave us and never forsake us all along the way. So until our next podcast, we wish you the very best and look forward to next time. We hope you'll tune in next time as we continue to explore Christian ministry and outreach in motorsports through the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. If you'd like to learn more about the National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries, visit our website at racewayministries.org. Follow us on Facebook under the name National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries. Check out our podcast and videos found on our National Fellowship of Raceway Ministries YouTube channel. Meanwhile, thanks for joining us for this presentation of Raceway Ministries Today.